Hello and welcome to the Change Champions podcast. We have a special episode for you today with our guest Carolina Pohl, who is our newest, our first, very first community spotlight member from our Network and Sell community. So we're happy and excited to have you on the show and welcome you to the podcast. And we will be getting to learn a little bit more about you, yourself, your background, some of the exciting things you're working on. So without further ado, let's dig in. Carol, can you say hello to the audience? Introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you so much, Rai. Thank you so much for the invite. I'm very excited to be here. And yes, a little bit about me. So I am a designer. I have been working in design for the last 17 years, more or less, from branding to graphic to product design in the last 8 years. Um, I've led teams from 4 designers to 25. More recently, for example, in Coach where I was head of design. And had my own agency also in the past, a long, long time ago. And yeah, during all these years, I've realized that a lot of early stage startups, where most of my career was actually, really struggle to grow their products with design, like with the strategic design in mind. And that led me to found my own practice where I am partnering with early stage leaders to support them with all things design. And we'll dive deep into that in a second.
Because when I hear design, I mean, uh, I'm not sure if you know this, but I've worked with graphic designers in the past. I think I was telling you before we got on that I've done some like website work, and I'm not a website designer by any means. But it's I feel like design can mean a lot of different things. Even my wife is a photographer and she works with designers, but that means
Mhm.
something totally different. It's a totally different world, the interior design world. So, in terms of like what design looks like from like for the work that you're doing and that you have done with founders, for example, can you just like narrow that down, even just for me to like what does that actually look like? Like, what's the output or the outcome when you say design? Like, what does that mean?
Yes, I think that's actually a very good question, and one I was even writing about last couple of days. Because when we think about design, still most people think about the visual aspects of it, right? Especially if we think about SaaS and digital products, we think about the interface, the screens we interact with, right? The mobile app, the website.
Yeah.
But design actually goes way beyond that. When we go for a more strategic side of design, we're actually talking about the thinking behind it, right? And understanding what actually needs to be in that interface, right? The content behind it, the flow that the person will actually go through when navigating that product. And all of those things, actually, those are all design, right? And that's exactly what I do, right? I will help teams navigate through all of that will arrive at the output of the app or the screen, right? We ship and deliver to users, but the whole process is actually design.
So it's kind of like a higher level, like a thinking level and strategy level of like what it's. I mean, again, I think that word is maybe almost even bastardized into different, like we can use it in a lot of different contexts. So in this context, it's sounding like, and actually, maybe I can ask too, is there a specific, because founders, again, a lot of different industries, is there a specific kind of person that you or group or team, I guess I should say, that you work, who does this serve best? I can put it that way.
Yes, that's actually a very good question, right? Because for an example, when we talk about product design, for many years that meant what some people know as industrial design, right? Meaning real physical products, right? But as the digital world and computers and apps evolved in the last couple of years or in the last decade, especially, digital products became known as just product design, right? And that's where I come in, right? I work mainly with SaaS and early stage founders, usually from seed to Series B, and who are usually building either it's a software or a platform that is used by other companies as well, or it can also be applications that are used by everyone, right? Like for example, Duolingo, which is a very known platform, is an application that is designed by many designers, right? What of us know. But for an example, even the platform that we are using here right now to record this podcast, there is thinking behind it, right? How does it work? Where do the buttons go? And all of the flow of how does it work to set up the recording and etc.
Yeah.
Right? And that basically what a digital product designer.
Right. Yeah. And I think that they're maybe even still in beta, so maybe they could use your help as well. There's
Well,
there's
I
definitely
know.
some things that I might improve, but that's a totally different conversation. But yeah, I mean, so even like the word that comes to, because this is totally your, like, you're the expert here. I don't know the design world like you do, but the word that comes to mind for me is almost like it does come back to that sort of visual component of like, well,
Mhm.
how do you take these kind of intangible things and make them more visual or visceral is not the word, but more, yeah, just more tangible. And
Mm.
to my knowledge, you are a little bit of a Miro celebrity. That's what it seems like. Could you maybe even I'll let you touch on that just for a second to me explain to the listeners what I mean by that.
Yes. Well, that's actually a very good question because coming up with the or like with a product and designing a product, right? It's not just sitting in a computer and designing it, right? It doesn't come it's not art, doesn't come from our inner uh, self, right? It actually comes from who is actually using it, right? Like when you're building a product, the main thing that you have to think about is actually what problem are you actually solving with that? Um, for an example, and I will use the same example as I used it before because it's a very popular tool, but like for Duolingo, right? It's a tool that aims to solve language learning, right? Or to support with language learning. And well, I use it. It's a product that I use because I am learning German because I'm in Germany. And when you're designing, actually, the main thing is that you have to think about what problem you're solving and to who, right? You have to talk to them and understand them. And it's from them that actually the ideas will come. Right? So a lot of the process and probably the most important process of designing a product, it's actually talking to the people that you aim to use that product, right? Kind of like also kind of like in parallel with sales, right? You're building something, you have to understand to whom you're selling that to, so
Totally.
that you can come up with a solution and an offer for that, right? And basically the same thing. And the design process comes and starts with that exactly, right? What we call user research, really talking to users, understanding their pain points, what challenges do they go through, how do they try to solve that, and by looking at that and learning from all of that, that's actually where the inspiration and the ideas will come to create something to help and potentially solve that problem for that user. So it is a very complex process. Actually, right? It's not just simply designing a button, for an example. And it's funny that you mentioned Miro because Miro is actually the tool that I use the most for that thinking together with my
Yeah.
clients. I mean, it became really popular with the pandemic where when everybody started working remotely, you kind of needed to have the whiteboard experience that you have in an office, right? And a lot of the work I do is aligning and supporting the teams to align, right? For an example, I had a past client, uh, very nice team, Series A baked already with a very solid product on the market, getting traction, a lot of users. In the AI area, so super complex product. And there was a lot of discrepancies and a lot of difficulties when the users were onboarding for the product because it's really complex. And they really needed to understand how to improve that. So, for an example, I've ran a workshop with them, what I call a clarity sprint. where we've went through the whole user journey of the product, what needs they are solving, what pain points they are solving for the user, what things still need to happen offline, what things already happen online on the platform, where are the gaps and the opportunities, and all of that is part of designing, right? The screens and the things that will come later, once you actually identify where these opportunities are, challenges, and improvements in the current existing product are, so they can actually prioritize and keep evolving that product with time, right? Because it's a constant iteration, right? You don't design, I mean, that's actually the main difference of a digital product from a physical product, right? I mean, if you are designing a water bottle, once it's here physically, you cannot change it, right? You need to do a new batch.
Right.
A digital product, you keep on iterating and changing and updating, right? And that's the main difference. And that's a lot of what I do as well. Also supporting the teams and leaders to identify what's the next thing. What's our next thing to develop and design for next.
Okay, I have lots of questions. So, I'm thinking about, and I'll put them in order here because I'm thinking maybe there's, as you know, we work with a lot of coaches and consultants and
Mhm.
solopreneurs, I could say. Um, and maybe there's a facilitator or a trainer of some sort who's listening to this and uh, sipping on their, I don't know, morning cup of coffee, and they're thinking, okay, so this is making sense, but I'm just scanning my mind as a listener to who do I know that might actually fit this. So if you were to be super specific, we said founder, like what would be the label that you would say for a listener to be able to say, oh yeah, I know someone who is that person.
Mhm. Oh, that's actually a very good question. And it would also depend a little bit on the stage of the company.
Okay.
Earlier stage, right? So when you see it, small company,
Yeah.
founder, product leader, co-founder, sometimes depending on the structure of the company, or whoever is actually building up the product and focusing on the product.
Okay.
Uh, Slightly bigger companies sometimes already have a product department, right? So that would be the main focus. And
Yeah.
even bigger companies like Series C, Baked, and etc., they would probably already have a whole internal design team, right? So that's a different focus, and that's exactly why I focus on earlier stages. So really supporting the founders and product leaders,
Yeah.
sometimes also tech leaders, right? So sometimes the engineering and design and product usually work hand in hand together.
Got it. So basically, if they're responsible for the product, the smaller the company, the more likely they are to maybe be the founder and they came up with the product.
Exactly. Yeah.
And as they grow, maybe they handed that over or it, yeah, product leader.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. So
Exactly.
those are the people. And if someone's listening, they're like, oh, I know that person. What is the main uh, complaint that and because you've been doing your own market research as you were referring to
Mhm.
earlier,
Mhm.
what is maybe like one or two of the main complaints or
Mhm.
problems that that product person is experiencing or dealing with at the
Uh-huh.
moment?
Yes, that will also depend a little on the stage they are, right? So if they are still searching for product market fit, that is the main goal, right? So supporting them reach that product
Yep.
market fit and designing the product for that, right? The MVP, as called the very first word. If they are already slightly over that, that's then the evolution of the product, right? What comes after the MVP? How do you keep traction of users? How do you increase conversion? For an example, a very popular challenge that early stage companies face, right? How do we increase conversion? Or product is working, you kind of already found a little bit of product market fit, but the users are not really engaging and you're not sure where the gaps are and etc. Also something that happens quite a lot. Um, or users are, especially in B2C cases, usually users are entering the platform, testing it out, but then they drop off and analyzing what's happening there, why, what is missing, right, etc. So that's a lot of discoveries that one can do also to and evolve the product so that it continuously prove product market fit because that's also a moving target, right? It continues to evolve and iterate.
So it sounds like there's a lot of like sub problems that pop up at different points of the journey or the product evolution.
Yeah.
And I guess my question then, again, like thinking about it from like our coffee loving listener that I've made up in my mind here is what like what happens if that if that founder or product leader, what happens if they don't find product market fit, or even if they found it but then they don't continue to iterate, like what's the consequence, I guess.
Um, well, they will probably just lose a lot of money, right? Because what happens also is, and right now with AI, I see this risk increasing a lot. It's so easy to build, right? You just vibe code an idea that you have without even knowing if it's actually solving a problem. And that costs time and costs money, a lot of money, depending on how much effort you put into it, right? And depending also on the complexity of it, you might spend, I don't know, 6 months building a product that no one will use. So really focusing on learning from the users and designing this product and building this product for the users, not for yourself, it's actually the main challenge, right? And that's I kind of like to say that this when founders and leaders have this designer mindset of thinking from the user's perspective and solving it for the user, that actually is already a competitive advantage. Already building and focusing the product with that in mind, right? With the users and their pain points in mind. And design can help in that sense of connecting this user's perspective with the business goals. Design can play quite an interesting bridge in that sense.
Yeah, and it sounds like if you don't accomplish that, well, you said you're burning time and money. And
Exactly. Yeah.
as a founder and a former chief operating officer, and I guess in a way I'm also a product owner in some way, shape, or form. I definitely don't like burning time and cash. That's not a fun place. I don't think for anyone to be, but
Exactly.
especially if you
Yeah.
have limited time, resources, etc. So, um, it sounds like an important problem to solve for sure. And I guess then the last question that had flurried into my mind here when you were talking through just design in general is okay, so all of that makes sense. And if there was, an opportunity for you to sit down with or meet with or connect with I'll just say product leader, what's typically like from your perspective, what's sort of the first, just the first even baby step, like for like if you were working with someone like, or
Mhm.
maybe someone you've worked with in the past, like what was the first
Mhm.
step that you took?
That's interesting because I actually made a post today on LinkedIn about exactly that. Uh, Usually, whatever product or project I'm working on, I always start by understanding the journey.
When you say
And
journey, tell me more.
yes, and that's actually, depending on the case, two journeys. If it's a product that already exists, there is the product journey. So how do the user onboard? What are the next steps? What actions do they take? Um,
Okay.
but there is the real user journey, right? Like the person who actually has a problem. What steps do they take? What steps do they want to take? Where do they look for solution? And combining and understanding these two things and where the gaps are, that's where you start spotting opportunities to
So
improve.
to improve. Yeah, go ahead. I'm cutting you off.
Basically, to and that's where you identify the opportunity to grow the product, to
Mhm.
go and meet the user where they are.
Got it. You're mapping out and understanding the product journey and the user journey and seeing how those two are in alignment or not, like
Exactly.
out
Yeah.
of alignment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Because then you have an overview
yeah,
of the whole experience, right? So that then you can start digging deep into the specificities.
interesting. And so in your experience, how often when you meet with or sit down with for the first time a founder or product leader, um, how often do they already have those things mapped out for you?
Usually in early stage companies, very rarely.
Okay.
In bigger, yeah, it will really depend on the level of product and design
Oh, fine.
maturity that they have, but
Yeah.
early stage
And
especially. Yes.
at what point do you think that is a must-have for let's say there's someone that maybe
Uh-huh.
doesn't have that mapped out yet, or maybe they have it kind of trying to say that word, a rudimentary version of it. Um, at what point does it make sense for them to sit down with someone with your level of expertise and experience that to really like iron that out?
Uh, I would say on the point where it starts to get difficult to have that clear mind, to have that clear overview of the whole experience of the product and the user journey. Or also when you need to when you need that type of input to be on more than one person's head. Because if you are one founder or maybe two founder sitting together every day on a row and building up, you both will have a good overview. But the moment it starts getting a little bit tricky, you have 2, 3, 5, 10, 30 people in the team. You have customer success, you have sales, you have product, you have tech, you have different levels of complexity of communication within the team. And the product itself is also getting bigger and complex. You need to start having that mapped out so that you can so that you can make sure that everyone that is working on that is aligned and aware of where we are, where we're going at.
Mhm. That's it's interesting you say that because it makes me reflect on my own experience working in a startup. I think there was like two official employees when I joined. And I mean, it wasn't big by any means. Like we scaled it up to maybe 10 or so employees by the time we had maxed or capped at when I had left. But even at that size, early on, it was like you could you could just meet with everyone and just have a conversation. It was pretty straightforward. You could kind of get away with not having systems in place or a lot of those kinds of, even tech tools, which was part of the reason I was brought in the first place was to start building those things out. And it seemed like, and now we weren't like a SaaS company. It was totally
Mhm.
service based, but I can imagine that as a SaaS company, that's like you have to have that like without having that roadmap or that journey mapped out. That's exactly what you were saying earlier. Things start to get really inefficient, and that's why you probably start burning time and cash.
Exactly right. I mean, I will always be a huge fan of lean processes and never too much processes because that's when bureaucracy starts to creep in. That's also not good. But you do need a little bit of structure and strategy, right? And even like if you are, for an example, a seed or even a Series A baked company, investors will ask you for structure, right? They will ask you
Totally.
for to be optimized, the whole process, the whole experience, and the whole service, right? I've worked in, I mean, when I was working at Coach, we went from Series A to Series C. So I really experienced that explosion of working with 80 people and working with 900 people and the need of all these things growing up. Well, it happens with the business with all departments, right? And with design and product, it's the same. You need to start having structures and create systems that will allow you to scale that process and that product sustainably, right?
Yeah, totally. And you had even said this at the beginning of this conversation, this episode, is that when it comes to the sales and marketing side of things, which is what we talk a lot about in Network and Sell, it's crazy how much overlap there is with actually the product side of things, in that you need to have a system and a map and a journey, and it's just they're different journeys, yeah, you still need it's a journey nonetheless.
Yeah.
So I'm conscious of time for our ourselves and and our listeners. I guess my final question to you would be, if someone again was listening to this for themselves, or maybe they have someone else in mind that seems like they should definitely get in touch with you. What and how should what is the best place, and how should they get in touch with you?
Yes, yes, yes. So I am in a lot of places, but the best two ones to find me is on my personal website, right? So carolhall.design, or on LinkedIn as well. Easy to find by my name. I don't think there's actually anyone else with the same name, so pretty easy to find me.
Very unique. Easy to, so Carol, one L, Pole, two
Yeah,
L's, dot design,
yeah, yeah,
and then same thing on LinkedIn, Carolina Pole. So
exactly. Yes,
awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to and to be our very first community spotlight member to be a guest on the episode. So I'm excited to kick that off. And I think by the time this is coming out, I think some of the LinkedIn things that you mentioned, and some of the events that you're doing will probably have been out as well. So maybe if people are
yeah,
listening, they can check out your LinkedIn profile and
recordings.
see some of the events that you've just kicked off. With that said, to our listeners, goodbye, thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye bye.